Welcome to CAM Radio, an ahead of the curve initiative by Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, bringing you every Friday the latest in legal and policy. Stay tuned, enjoy listening.
Welcome to Sril Amarchand Mangaldas CAM Radio Clear Cut Clarity with Class. This podcast minimizes the mayhem and crafts clarity with care and class, befitting the name Clear Cut. This talks about the issues that matter as well as their pertinent legal aspects. In the ever-evolving landscape of business, finance, and technology, one thing remains abundantly clear. Change is not just inevitable, it may just be the only constant. The financial and business world seem to have undergone seismic shifts, and there seems to be a tantalizing dance between regulators and innovative businesses. India is known for its rich tapestry of traditions and cultures, and the humble entrepreneur emerged as a modern day trailblazer. In the early days of a successful entrepreneur, there's a world filled with skepticism and naysayers who couldn't fathom the audacity of an entrepreneur's dreams. Yet, these entrepreneurs press on, undeterred by the scale of challenges ahead. The road to success for any entrepreneur is seldom a smooth one, and in the world of fintech, uncharted territories may merge with established financial system. There are financial intricacies, regulatory mazes, and the relentless pursuit of innovation that test an entrepreneur's mettle. But it's all these trials that forge true entrepreneurs into the formidable force they become. One such entrepreneur is Kunal Shah, the founder and CEO of CRED, the founder of Freecharge, which was acquired by Snapdeal, an investor who has invested in startups like Razorpay, Unacademy, Innovate, and more. Today, let's explore the boundless spirit of innovation and human endeavor and the challenges along the way. And at a time when there's a rise of fintechs, are we more likely to see more fin or more tech? To explore it all, please help me welcome Kunal Shah and CAMP's very own, the managing partner himself, Cyril Shroff. Kunal and Mr. Shroff, it is my sheer pleasure and privilege to welcome you on the CAM radio. Kunal, just before we got into the discussion, Mr. Shroff and we were talking, and he was very clear about the fact that, Shrija, we should really have Kunal talk on this show. So we'll sort of get to hear more and more from you on the 35 odd minutes that we have with you. The starting question, and Kunal, just given that we have you as our external guest today, one with such an extensive entrepreneurial experience, you would agree that there has been a unicorn obsession for a while, if you will. And now, at a time of a funding crunch and macroeconomic headwinds, do you see any shift in the perception of unicorn obsession and high paper valuations? Will it be like a permanent change even after the funding winter thaws out?
I think the fact that we are talking about unicorns is the obsession is still there. And I don't think that's likely to go away. India is a very peculiar country where we like to make gods and then do the visurgence of the same god. And therefore unicorns fit that bill quite well. And I think I've mentioned this before, but unicorns remain mythical. The only thing that is true is enduring businesses which makes profit year over year. And till a business A makes profit and proves that it can make profit over a very long period of time, they are going to remain as startups at best. And I think one cannot ignore the change that they bring into our lives. A lot of these startups tend to be loss-making. The reason they are loss-making is a very simple analogy is like if Bandra ceiling P&L was looked at, I think the first 8 years would just look like losses, right? Because you are building the capex to build the bridge, right? Many startups invest a lot of capital in building distribution, right? If you remember the early days of Jio, they gave out SIM cards for free and data was free for probably a year, right? And it today is a very, very profitable company, but they got the distribution going by focusing on offering freebies. So I think with the funding winter, summer The good news is the world's money has not disappeared. The money in the world keeps growing. And what remains an attractive asset keeps changing based on the sentiments of that time, right? In a market where interest rate was zero, it made sense to take a lot more risky bets to make money off your wealth that you have. But now with interest rates up, many assets kind of giving you stable returns, you may not want to take the risky bets. Having said that, if the unicorns have managed to cross a certain revenue threshold, again, they become attractive investments, right? So very few unicorns, I would say, would be breaching let's say, 100 million revenue threshold. And even smaller number is 200 million, and even a smaller number is 300 million, right? So I think that capital will always come to high quality companies, right? The betting mindset on early stage is not going to go away. The venture capitalists have a lot of capital to be invested. But the good news is every disruptor of the unicorn is already born. And that tells you the speed of change that we are going to go through in the world that we are operating in is unparalleled. And AI is just a glimpse of what we are going to see in years to come. But I think businesses, if they are not evolving very, very fast, they all have the risk of not being around.
You sort of mentioned that there is a disruptor to every unicorn already being born. That's a very interesting point. So, Kunal, that's a great segue to sort of next aspect then. What, according to you, is the most overrated idea in technology, the most underrated? And in that context, perhaps what becomes the future of technology businesses then, according to you?
I think the most overrated thing is deciding the fate of a company based on what they do today. And most underrated is the quality of teams that people have, because good companies can completely shape shift and transform into a completely different entity. And let's not go too far into startups. Let's think about our homegrown Reliance for a second right now, right? They started with being a trader in the cloth market, to manufacturing apparel, to getting into petrochemicals, building the largest refinery, have ventured into retail. Most people ridiculed that their ability of retail is going to be impossible to achieve. They built the largest retail franchise with the highest amount of profit, probably. They have managed to build a very big telecom company. They have managed to disrupt every category that they have gotten into. And guess what? They might be at a very interesting juncture to even do something in AI, right? So what is most underrated is high quality teams that can absolutely venture into any direction and demonstrate success. And in businesses that otherwise seem to have no connection whatsoever, right? And what is most overrated is, what do they do today? One has to look at the success of Reliance by looking at the first business that Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani did of trading clothing material, you would have never predicted that what this business is likely to happen. So I think the underrated parts are teams and ability for teams to stick together for a very long period of time, because there's a compounding that happens right after that. Unfortunately, we are living in a world where all of us are very happy jumping jobs. All of us are very happy jumping into different ventures and being distracted versus building a high quality team together and kind of focusing on execution. And I think as time passes and technology evolves, one will realize the quality of teams will matter and outbid or outlast every single technology advancements that exist.
Okay, Mr. Shroff, I would like to sort of get you into this point, sort of which Kunal mentioned, that perhaps the quality of teams, their long-term nature, their resilience to sort of build very large, enduring enterprises is something which is underrated. And he sort of brings in the example of Reliance quite often. And if one looks at it from a distance, perhaps Reliance and Amazon are the two sides of the same coin in terms of disrupting every category that you enter. If I were to ask you the same question, then what do you think is the most overrated idea in technology, or the most underrated according to you? What would that really be?
I think it's kind of hard to answer that question because at both extremes or the both ends of the spectrum, that keeps changing as well. What may be the most underrated or overrated idea today may be something else that is tomorrow. Just now, everybody is talking about AI. I mean, it's kind of the AI and large language models and chat GPT and all of that. So I think that's the conversation of the day. It's too early to sort of pass judgment on today as to whether it's an overrated or an underrated idea, but it is certainly one of the most dominant conversations on everybody's lips. My feeling is that it is probably, in terms of the conversations today, it is overrated in the short term, but we are underrating the impact of it in the long term. It's the change, I think, is going to be profound. I think the good news, I think, is that I feel with given India's tech talent, that India is going to be a very important part of this global emerging conversation on technology and on AI. And actually, I had a question for Kunal because I know that he's a very deep thinker on these issues. Kunal, I'd love to get your thoughts in terms of how you see the India trajectory from now on. We are on the day one of the G20 that is opening. The world's eyes are on us. India is on everybody's lips globally. How do you see the trajectory over the next decade of our economy and our nation?
Cyril, it's a definitely an interesting time, I would say. I would say that we have scored extraordinary marks on marketing the country. And what needs to follow is substance after that, right? And I will define substance in more clear terms. For example, for our per capita income to grow, we cannot have less than 10% of female participation of labor. Imagining a $5,000 per capita nation with just one gender participating in the labor force and one gender declining from the labor force is not going to help, right? And I think some systemic intervention will need to be done for that to change. I don't see any major moves that is going to reverse that. And I think it's going to hurt us in times to come. We should never forget that before China took off from that $3,000 per capita income to that 15,000 that they have kind of been through, is with 96% of female participating in the labor force actively, right? In urban India, we're probably under 10%. And probably maybe there are 3 or 4 countries who have something lower than us. So we have to really change that. If you do want to play the game of capitalism and per capita income, I'm not saying it's the best game to play in life, but if that is the game to be played. The second thing I would say is that building infrastructure is going to be a challenge. I think the way the country is structured, investing in cities, investing in this may not necessarily result in, let's say, a democratic outcomes for winning elections, right? You have to kind of invest in smaller towns, city, villages, rural to kind of get them up. But I think the cities are not able to keep up. And today, that is causing a lot of people who have some wealth to kind of migrate out, right? The quality of life that one can live. Let's say if you have got to $1 million of a net worth, you can actually have a significantly quality of life delta if you chose to move out. And I think we need to retain the wealthy of the country by providing the infrastructure. And I know that we are doing a lot of stuff. For example, definitely if you see Mumbai, it is kind of investing a lot, but it almost feels like we are catching up to a 10, 20 years deficit mostly, right? The third thing is building trust in our institutions, right? And reliability and scalability of business. So a lot of time what happens is, at least what I've heard from investors, they're always worried about investing because will there be stability to operate business in, right? And I think these
important factor of, do our best entrepreneurs see the psychological safety?
Yes. And Cyril, it's a very interesting point that you made about psychological safety, right? I think for at least the younger entrepreneurs who do not know how the legal situation works or regulatory situation works and how does the bureaucracy works and all of that. And let's say there are many businesses in Mumbai, Delhi who've been around for 30, 40, 50, 100 years who know how some of these games are played, there is always worry in the mind of entrepreneurs of like constantly being on the wrong side of the equation or being pushed to the wrong side of the equation and don't know how to kind of fight back. Having said that, we are at least recognizing startups, celebrating them. Hopefully, will realize the value of respecting risk takers versus job seekers. I think that mindset should change. Cyril, I don't know if you remember, I had told you once about my visit to Portugal and seeing what I noticed in the churches. The best churches had the tombs or cemeteries of the royalty, and one more category of people were allowed to be inside the church, which was the explorers and the risk takers. So Vasco da Gama and others were actually given the position next to the royalty in the churches. And I think only when we make entrepreneurs the heroes or risk-taking people the heroes, we will change the fabric of the nation. And I think, uh, uh, I've always made this joke that we've made movie about every single mafia, every single scamster, and maybe make more than one movie of every mafia and scamster. But how many of us know the story of the entrepreneurs that build the nation, right?
Maybe we should make a movie on you then. Maybe I just hope
Absolutely not
Netflix is
me.
hearing towards this conversation and they could just
Absolutely
get
not
the
me.
idea.
Feeling of there is no freedom to fail.
Yeah.
I think to build a entrepreneurial culture or a Silicon Valley type of mindset, you need to have the freedom to fail without there being any kind of malfeasance being associated. The moment otherwise you fail and everybody jumping all over you, that there must have been something wrong. So I think that trust between the state and the entrepreneurial class is a critical component of building India.
That's
Yeah.
an interesting juncture for this conversation. We spoke about quite a few things. We spoke about unicorn obsession, the funding winter, the India story, the psychological safety net for entrepreneurs, what India could really do on that front. And Kunal, over the course of the conversation, you sort of mentioned something very interesting on artificial intelligence. And so I think it's about time that we pick up a little further on that also. What really do you think will the labor markets look like in 2030, if you will? I mean, if AI were to potentially displace 90% of jobs in the next decade, and I think you are somebody who's a very strong believer of that, which is quite staggering, if you will. I mean, this country has a very young population. Most of our jobs are like low code, back office jobs, which were being done by this young tech talent. If all of this were to sort of go to AI, is there a synergy you see between people and AI that could reshape industries or create entirely new business models in India? What is your view?
I think it's a great question. First of all, we have to recognize what is going on, right? While it is exciting sometimes to catch on to these catchphrases that 90% of jobs will be displaced, we have to go to the nuance of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The depth of skill that we have built, or the depth of education, the depth of quality of compounding that people do. For example, most people stop learning after they have graduated. They almost thought that the only job of learning was till you graduate and then you're done with it. But in a world that we are living in right now, you cannot afford to not be constantly learning and connecting dots. Let's take another point of view on this, is that a lot of people say that, oh yeah, I'm not very good with tech. Anybody who says that is definitely going to lose their job, right? Because how can you not be good at tech, right? Because somebody who's good at tech will be significantly better, right? And I think many jobs will be lost in large cohorts, right? Let's take an example of there was a time in early Mumbai, there used to be liftmen who used to operate lifts. And by the way, they still remain in many buildings, which is a very fascinating thing by itself. But now you don't need a person to operate. It used to be a very mechanical device, and you have to do a lot of things, and you lose some strength. Sometimes you use the older elevators that we had. But now you don't need them, but we still have this. For example, security guards at ATM, right? Like we have reached a stage where it may not be something that is needed as much as we thought it would be. But these are millions of jobs that we are talking about. And soon enough, for example, I used to run a BPO company not too long ago. I can imagine that 90% of the stuff that we did at the BPO could be easily automated through AI. And we are talking about millions of jobs right now that are currently earning. And I think the thing about this is that uh, even software industry, which is one of the big change that happened for the country, is that the software industry and the IT services brought a lot of foreign export money to us, and we kind of progress as a country by building cities around technology professionals. But we are entering a time where it's going to be serious challenge to keep up to which areas will get disrupted, because now entrepreneurs who can take AI and build something absolutely interesting, right? For example, Cyril, we've talked about, let's say, legal disruption and it is the junior employee level, right?
Yes.
On some of the tasks that are done. Now, suddenly you might just automate dramatically, and you may not need as many lawyers operate the same amount of quality of law firm. In fact, if you choose to not focus on AI, as a law firm, you may be at a disadvantage, right? Now,
Kunal,
today,
how are you using AI in CRED? Let's talk about that. A lot of people would be like very
very,
interested to hear someone like you. How are you using AI in CRED?
so very early days for us to what we are doing is we are every month or two we are organizing an AI hackathon within the company to come up with ideas and create more ideas. But some very fascinating things have emerged from that, and these are very early stages of these ideas right now to build into a full blown product per se. For example, we built a tool where you can write a simple English query on the data and it presents results to you. You don't need to be good at learning SQL and have an analyst to say, for example, we want to ask that how many customers we manage to improve credit scores of, right? I can actually ask this question in English on Slack or WhatsApp and it gives me the answers back, right? Earlier, you had to use an analyst and like you have a large army of team that converts your English question to a technology question and then present a report and then put it in a PPT format which you can consume. Now you don't need any of that. Another example is customer support. I do believe that AI will have a significant impact on the quality of service you can provide on customer support, because you can train the AI once and it understands it, but for every human being, you have to train them again and again and again. Every individual you have to train. In AI, you don't have to train again and again. You train it once, it remembers it for a life, right? And I think that's another thing that's going to be quite disruptive. The third thing is even software. I believe that software engineers will be 2 times more efficient in their work, which may reduce the number of headcount you need to generate more quality work. So I think we are entering very interesting times. I think most of us cannot even imagine the outcome of the things that AI will do. It's very early to imagine that.
I think even on the legal side, this is one of the hot debates, not only legal but any knowledge-based industry as well. Because what Chat GPT opened our eyes to is really what is the art of the possible in terms of asking simple English questions and getting structured answers, which otherwise you would have had to sort of construct either through a lot of manual effort or different modalities. But every law firm in the world is going through this analysis of what is the amount of labor substitution that you can do for at least certain types of jobs using AI. But there are risks associated with it at this point of time. One of the risks is that this sort of AI hallucinates. But these are all problems that I think will get solved. And if you were to sort of do a little bit of a projection, even 2 to 3 years down the line, I see AI being a very important part of any knowledge-based institution. So I think we are on the threshold of something big. Early stages, it's like you're climbing a mountain, but you're at the foothills of that revolution.
Kunal, with the rise of fintech, the financial industry seems to have witnessed a paradigm shift. How do you see the evolving relationship between traditional banks and fintechs, including neobanks? Should fintechs pursue banking licenses? Do you think obtaining a banking license is the ultimate destination for fintechs, or do you think there can be an alternative path to success?
Answer is not straightforward to some of these questions.
Sure.
First of all, you have to understand that single thing that we do today is going to become significantly more efficient than it has been in the past, right? Not too long ago, it was complicated to send money to somebody first time. Not too long ago, it was hard to use an app to do your banking transactions. Not too long ago, we were dependent on cash. Not too long ago, it was complicated to get a loan, right? And things are going to get even more and more and more efficient, right? I think technology companies will have a significant edge to make things more efficient and help the current financial institutions to deliver those offerings much more efficiently. Should these technology companies themselves aim to become licensed and do technology-based stuff? Yes and no. I believe that our regulator has done the right thing by making sure that very select fit and proper candidates make it to getting the licenses. And I think that's the right thing to do, right? I think you need to prove your competence and capability for decades. And they have kept industrial houses away from banking license for the right reasons, right? And if you go back not too long ago in the history of India, you see that like maybe I think it was in the 1800s or so, like when industrial houses managed to have some licenses in the bank, it did not cause any positive impact. A philosophical tenets that the regulator has taken to kind of be selective in the way they operate and graduate people to the next level depending on what they bring in terms of value to the consumer and their stability and their competence to do business well. So you will see more and more banks, insurance companies, wealth companies doing significant rehaul on the way they think about technology. And it's going to be almost existential going forward, right? Because I'll tell you what, imagine this. Every young customer, and I'm using the word young very generously, I say anybody who's under the age of 30 knows the difference between a good quality app and a bad quality app because they use global products all the time. So nobody can be okay with, oh, thoda India style, it'll work that way. Nobody will be excused for having an inferior app or an inferior technology offering or and people expect high quality service in everything, right? And I think that is going to determine the success of companies. And second factor, there's going to be engagement. Let me explain this slightly differently, that it's not very commonly used in the fintech world, but wherever consumers love spending time is where the products will be sold the most. Let's take an example of what happened to ATMs. Before, withdrawing money used to be going to the bank, filling out a slip and withdrawing money. Cyril, we are from a time where we've done this enough number of times that go fill a deposit to deposit money and collect money through the slip. Then the ATMs came inside the bank branch. Then the ATMs came outside the bank branch. And now the ATMs are at a mall, right? Or at an airport. So ultimately, products will be used at the place where engagement is there, right? And I think, therefore, companies will have to chase engagement to really win. And it is not surprising that companies like TikTok happen to be one of the top lenders in China and also the top e-commerce company in China, which started just merely as a video app.
I think it's part of a global conversation that is taking place on how to regulate fintech. And it is recognized as something which kind of the fundamental rules are different from a banking system. I think there's a lot of global regulatory conversations that are taking place as well. And even our regulator announced a few days back that I think there's likely to be fresh regulation on this. So I think we are sitting on the threshold of a new era of fintech regulation, but I'm hopeful that it is going to be more enabling and it will provide more structure to the industry. So it is going to accelerate further growth because it provides a kind of a umbrella of both legitimacy and risk management. Because the last thing that you want is if any of the sort of major players get into difficulty, the normal regulatory reaction in India is to jump all over the sector and then it sort of goes into a downward spiral. So having a good regulation in place for risk management and for the basic hygiene of the industry, I think is a good thing. And I think we are on the threshold of that.
Thanks for that, Mr. Shroff. Kunal, I also want to understand from you that sort of being a fintech entrepreneur, how much is regulatory conversation? How much time do you really spend understanding regulation, seeking clarity on that? And do you really think in the age of 2023, one can really be a fintech CEO or a fintech entrepreneur thinking that, okay, this is not my job, I'm delegating it to somebody? Do you really think that can happen? And the same respiratory range, what really are your asks from the regulator? What really are your concerns then, being a young entrepreneur that you mentioned? Yeah.
I think first of all, we have to understand that we have done well as a country because we have good regulators. So we should not ignore the role that one has played. The world is
Absolutely.
changing. The world is changing quickly around us, both for the entrepreneurs and the regulator as well. We should also not forget that the regulator has innovated more than most fintechs have by creating NPCI, building India stack, allowing a lot of this innovation to accelerate the country and create more and more inclusion, right?
Sandbox, they've created Sandbox.
Sandbox and innovation hub. This is a unusual thing that one can expect from the regulator. And I think we are at the forefront of innovation in the world. The world at G20 is noticing everything that we have done, and it is just a matter of time that we'll keep doing more and more. Like, even I just came from GFF recently, and like we had 4 new launches by NPCI, and most fintechs, we're just keeping up to what's going on. I think what one needs to realize is, if you want to do fintech and you are dealing with people's money and trust, you have to respect regulation. You have to take the effort to understand. You have to take the effort to explain what you are trying to do, because a regulator is very clear on what values they live by, right? And what is in spirit, what they want, right? In terms of finding shortcuts, trying to be, I would say the word, be cute, is not going to be something that is going to be appreciated. And I think they want serious players. They want committed people who are not some fly-by-night operators. Otherwise, we lead to a massive amount of distrust in the economy, massive amount of distrust in our banking and financial situation, which should not be the case. For example, the whole Chinese lender story is a great example and lesson for us, that how we should allow certain things to be there. And while we may not want over regulation, we should understand that even that weakest link can cause serious trust issue, which can permanently damage trust on everybody else who's trying to play the game in a more fair manner. So as a founder, I don't think one can escape and say, I'm going to delegate this to some chief compliance officer or chief regulatory officer, or tell some law firm. You
True.
have to be there. Regulator has to even see you as a person. And one ignores that fact that if you're not seen to be the person who's kind of doing this stuff, and your values are not understood and appreciated, you are up for some surprises which you don't want in your business.
I think let's spend the last sort of 2 to 3 minutes on the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. And I think it's very important that we talk it in the fintech context. I mean, how do you see this affecting the operations and the strategies of fintech startups and unicorns in India? Does this really balance innovation and regulation? Do you think this could affect investor sentiment, especially when data is seen as a new oil? Yeah.
I think the regulation is centered around ensuring that the user is the ultimate authority on who they can give to and who they can share this data with. And there are some do's and don'ts that have been prescribed on how it should be dealt with. I think as companies, one has to become significantly more responsible when it comes to data. But one cannot, the regulator, the government realizes that today, if you want to create inclusion and get from, let's say, 35 million people getting loan to 300 million people getting loan, data is going to be essential, right? And it is going to be playing a big role. So there is account aggregator that has been created with the mindset to say there is a right way of accessing data. There is a right way of storing data. And that is going to be the norm for going forward. I think anything that breaks the fundamental promise on how data should be treated, if that is violated, like, obviously it cannot be okay in any situation. So I think we are entering a time where there is going to be more stability, because it's better than constantly being worried about, oh, what may come and impact your business. Now that you know what is the prescribed guidelines and some of these things, you can actually build the business with the recommendations made and be on the right side of the equation.
Mr. Shroff, you would like to add anything to that before we sort of wrap up?
No, I sort of fully agree with what Kunal has said, and I think we've done a lot of study on the data protection bill. I think the time had come; it was in a way overdue, and the final version in which it came out is a more pragmatic kind of tropicalized version for our context. So I think full marks on that. It is going to make a big difference in terms of how various sectors, including financial services, consumer tech, e-commerce, and all of them evolve from now onwards. And we have 1.4 billion people with so much data, that just the data that India has makes it one of the most attractive markets in the world. So I'd like to ask, sort of end this on a personal note with Kunal in terms of how he would like to imagine the rest of his entrepreneurial journey. What does the next decade look like for you personally, Kunal, as well? I mean, you're an inspiration to so many entrepreneurs, not just in your field, but across as well. So I'd like to just sort of hear your philosophy on the way forward. You're at an interesting point of time in your life as well as in India's life.
There are Cyril, two categories of people definitely do well when the world is changing too much and is chaotic for most people's imagination. And when the rapid change is there, one is lawyers and second is entrepreneurs. You happen to be both. In my case, is just one category, but I think there couldn't have been a more exciting time to build, and I feel very privileged and lucky to be in this time in this country to be building. All of us had the option to migrate to a much a higher quality of life kind of a place and keep saying that we are in a developed nation. But I think being here and seeing this nation transform 1 year at a time, yes, it's going to be painful, this journey. And Cyril, you have seen the transformation more years than I have managed to witness. And I think I can see your excitement being around seeing AI. For me as a tech entrepreneur, I just feel more and more excited. My personal philosophy, however, is to find ways to give back. If I can figure out a way to create and shape some way lives of maybe 1,000 entrepreneurs and teach them to kind of pay it forward in some ways, we will transform into a country of entrepreneurs versus like job seekers, which I think is going to be the key factor that's going to change the trajectory of growth rate of the country, right? There is no way we can support, especially with AI, we cannot have so many job seekers.
Yes.
Yeah. So quick rapid fire, Kunal, like very quick, short answers. And we just have like got 5 to 7 minutes in this. If Kunal Shah were to start out in 2023, what startup would he do?
An AI startup.
What within AI? Tell us that. It's very, very interesting to hear
that. If you do AI, why would you want to limit yourself to doing one thing?
Yeah.
Okay. If upskilling won't be able to catch up with artificial intelligence, do you think universal basic income is an idea whose time has come?
We forget that many nations already run on that version of universal basic income. It's just not called universal basic income. Many countries are already doing that. We call it subsidies, we call it support, we call it all of those things. This already exists in many countries, and I think it might accelerate. The only thing is that you don't want to only have the cohorts of people who are going to be supported through subsidies. You want to make sure there is enough innovation and growth in per capita income.
Which avatar of yours do you like the most? CEO, operator, or as an angel investor?
I would say thinker.
Okay. One fintech entrepreneur besides yours whom you admire the most?
Oh, I have a long list, but I would say that one fintech entrepreneur who's transformed and done many things since then is Peter Thiel. Started with PayPal, but gone on to do so many more interesting things, and probably very few deep thinkers out there. And I share one common thing with him. We are both philosophy majors with one fintech exit in our life.
Okay. And if you were to name one Indian fintech entrepreneur, who would that be?
I would not want to name one. It will be unfair. But I think what I see folks, I mean, I have a lot of respect for what PhonePe, Paytm, Zerodha, Grow, every single entrepreneur is extraordinary in what they are doing.
Okay. What has been the most meaningful takeaway for you from this conversation today?
That Cyril thinks it's day one, and I should be excited that I have many more years to go, and have the same amount of enthusiasm that he has, and hopefully will keep achieving something to his level in life.
Okay, Mr. Shroff, it's time for you now. What remains your biggest advice for the new age fintech entrepreneur? If you were to give a heartfelt advice to say Kunal and the likes, what would that really be? Yeah.
I think be ready for change all the time. I think it's just about constant reinvention of yourself.
Mr. Shroff, what about Kunal Shah appeals to you?
I find that even in every commercial conversation or any business conversation, there is a underpinning of philosophy and deep thinking that always kind of resonates with me. So there is a lot that has got. He's a very sorted person. So that's what I really like about him.
Okay, and the same question for you. If upskilling won't be able to catch up with AI, do you really think universal basic income is an idea whose time has come?
We have to be very careful about not going down a socialist path. I think we moved away from that, and we are moving towards. We're not fully covered the distance, and we're moving towards a more market-based economy. We have to be very careful of not falling in this trap of being neither here nor there.
Okay, and what has been your most meaningful takeaway from this conversation today?
Kunal's energy. That happens every time I talk to him. So it's the reason why I keep coming back to him and having more conversations.
Oh, what a fun conversation today. So meaningful. We traversed through so many ideas and topics. What do you think, Kunal? Did we make your Saturday? Did you have an interesting time?
No, it was good. Thank you so much for having me.
And so, in the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, and regulation, CAM Radio has journeyed through a landscape teeming with challenges, triumphs, and the force of change. What emerges from all these insights is a portrait of resilience, adaptability, and unrelenting curiosity that defines the entrepreneurial spirit. In a world where data privacy and AI are reshaping industries, entrepreneurs can forge a unique partnership with technology to drive unprecedented innovation. And so CAM Radio hopes you are left with new insights, a deeper understanding of the challenges and opportunities ahead, and a renewed appreciation for the work that entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators do. Until we see you again, goodbye and good luck.